Micklegate Bar is the traditional entrance for royalty into the city. Such a commanding position meant that, for emphasis, here were placed the heads of rebels, and one such was the Duke of York after the Battle of Wakefield in 1460. So York may overlook the town of York. Micklegate leads the visitor from the west towards Ouse Bridge. It's one of the four main entries to the city. There is quite a steep gradient in Micklegate. It's a street which has now been dignified, made handsome by some really beautiful Georgian houses. St Mary Bishop Hill Junior. Bishop Hill itself perhaps takes its name from the existence of a bishop in Roman times. Just to the right of the present building, sloping down a little towards the river, there was found about 30 years ago an apse which belonged to a Christian building built in Roman times. In 314 AD, Eborius, a bishop of York, attended the Council of Arles. This church obviously doesn't date from his times, but the tower itself uses old Roman stone which was found in the vicinity, and also it was put together in the 1000s. It probably predates the Norman conquest. St Mary Bishop Hill Junior. The arch is built of Roman stone, and it was built at the same time as the tower. The stones themselves may well have come from the gate to the Roman settlement, the Colonia. The hole which we see is a device which masons use to facilitate the lifting of a stone. It's difficult to date. It could be Roman or it could be medieval. The bell on the left is 14th century, the stamp of St John the Baptist. On the right, this was cast, or probably cast, by John Hutton, a York bell founder in the 15th century. Inside the tower of St Mary Bishop Hill, and we can see the rough Saxon stones, the oldest tower, the oldest part of any church building in York. Bishop Hill is crisscrossed with several little lanes. This is St Martin's Lane, taking its name from the church of St Martin cum Gregory, mostly built of brick. It's going to be the home for the exhibition of stained glass, ready perhaps in 2 or 3 years' time. Just off Micklegate is Holy Trinity Priory. For some 4 centuries it was home to about 40 or 50 monks. Holy Trinity is a monastic foundation. It's lasted for about 400 years. It was dissolved at the dissolution of 1538, and at the present time there is an exhibition of a 13th century bestiary, a book depicting creatures, beasts and moral tales which can be deduced from the behaviour of animals. A beautiful example of monkish work of the 13th century. The picture depicted here shows the gateway to the Holy Trinity precinct, and this was the entrance to a monastery. It became one of the staging points for the York staging of the mystery plays. It was unfortunately removed in the middle of the 19th century, but the name remains in Priory Street. So this shows Henry Cave's view of the existing gateway, drawn in 1813. About 1455, a huge storm largely destroyed the fabric of St. Nicholas Church, which was right by Holy Trinity. The parishioners couldn't afford to rebuild it and asked permission to build a tower of St. Nicholas and lean it against the fabric of Holy Trinity, and this was done. We're at the southwest corner of the fortifications, the Norman Wall now, and this is called Bitch Daughter Tower, probably some corruption of Bishop Hill Tower. And there we are. This is the enclosing the civilian population area known as the Colonia. The stretch of wall from Bitch Hill Tower running down to the river was cut short in the 19th century with the creation of Skeldergate. Here we see the modern ending to the wall. This wall encloses the Motte Bailey fortification, which William I erected in the 1080s. Bailey Hill. Skeldergate is the street of the shield makers. On the left we see Lady Anne Court, Lady Anne named after Lady Anne Middleton, whose hotel lies just a wee bit further down the road. There are some very pleasant accommodation flats for the elderly on the right. The two buildings in front of us now are in need of considerable redevelopment, but they are solid structures, and both were warehouses which were in their heyday in the 19th century. The one on the right is called the Bonding Warehouse, and until recently it was a pub, a very well-run pub, and I expect it'll turn into flats before very long. On the right we see the limestone curtain wall of the Franciscan Friary, which was embanked in 1291. One consequence of this was that the south side of the river, which is now Queen's Staithe, silted over, and there were numerous complaints made to the Franciscans, or about the Franciscans. The result was that the south bank of the river was embanked itself, or rather a wall was established in 1305, some 14 years later. This unsurpassed view of York encompasses the Bonding Warehouse, which we looked at earlier on the left, and in the middle distance Ouse Bridge, a bus crawling over. The present bridge was built between 1810 and 1820. That replaced the earlier humped bridge, which was rebuilt by 1566 after the immense power of ice on the river had brought down two arches, and for about 18 months the citizens of York had to make do with, first of all, a ferry across the Ouse on the place of the old bridge, and secondly a bridge of boats lashed together. This lasted for some 18 months. The steep gradients meant a horse was tethered at the bridge end to help laden wagons get over. To prevent ships entering the landing stages on both King's Staithe and Queen's Staithe, throughout the late Middle Age, a chain was put across the river from the site of the bonding warehouse, from a tower on this side of the river, to a tower at the extremity of the Franciscan Priory on the north bank of the river. And we can see roughly the site of that tower on the north side, the central side, near to the house, which is brick on the first floor and limestone blocks on the ground floor. We're looking across the river now towards the mound on which stands Clifford's Tower. This answered the wooden palisade, the Motte and Bailey Castle, on the south-west bank of the river, known as the Old Bailey. And these were the two fortifications from which William the Conqueror, William I, controlled access to the city and controlled the city itself. As York grew, its communication needs increased, and to replace the previous ferry, a bridge was built in the late 19th century, Skeldergate Bridge. York constantly surprises with its views, and here, unexpectedly, from Skeldergate, a wonderful view of Clifford's Tower. We're now standing in Carr's Lane, named after the mid-18th century architect John Carr, who designed and built Fairfax House in Castlegate, became Lord Mayor later. And we're looking towards a jumble of roofs towards Skeldergate, and in the far distance we can see the lantern tower of All Saints Pavement. We're now standing in the burial ground, in the churchyard of St Mary Bishop Hill Senior, the church which unfortunately was demolished in 1956. But there it is, a wonderful site for picnics, it makes a beautiful green space in the heart of Bishop Hill. It also commands remarkable views over the city, the jumble of roofs behind me, including the lantern tower of All Saints Pavement and St Mary Castlegate. But here we have a fine open space which can be enjoyed by everyone in the locality. We're now in Bishop Hill Senior, looking towards the convergence of St Martin's Lane, Fetter Lane, Trinity Lane and Bishop Hill Junior. On the left is Walter Brearley's 1916 warehouse, and on the right, with the prominent doorcase, is a late Georgian building which formerly was a youth hostel. Jacob's Well, the name itself was established certainly by 1822 and was the name of a public house. Long before that, in the 1530s, it was acquired by Isabel Ward, the last prioress of the Benedictine nunnery at Clementhorpe, south of the city. And she lived in it till 1569, so about 30 years residence, and bequeathed it before her death to the Feffys of Holy Trinity. It's in that church that she herself is buried. A wonderful presence. name itself, Jacob's Well, derives from the account in John chapter 4 verse 6 about the encounter between Jesus and a Samaritan woman at a well built by Jacob in the centuries before. And it is a joke upon the fact that, as Jesus said, whoever drinks of the water I give will never thirst again. The people who drank from the beer of this public house would, of course, hopefully thirst again. But it is Isabel Ward that we remember most as the presence which dominates, which permeates this lovely medieval building. The excellent canopy does not belong to Jacob's Well itself, but came from a pub in Davygate, also in York. The crane supports here are a reminder of the commercial use of Queen's Staith. People are now drawn, of course, to the river for quite different reasons. Micklegate runs down to the river. This part is called Briggate or Bridge Street. On the other side we see St John's Church, which is now a pub called The Parish. The medieval rectory house by the side of All Saints is in North Street. Yeah, sure. No, it's okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You're part of the rich tapestry of life. Until the late 19th century, York just had one bridge across the river, and that was the Ouse Bridge. Then Lendal Bridge was built, which we're looking at now. The tower is Lendal Tower, and the present tower itself is the Waterworks Tower, built in the